Who has heard of the term zoochosis? Zoochosis is basically the term that's been generated to describe the display of behaviour that animals will exhibit and show when they are removed from their natural living environment and placed in a restrictive living environment like the zoo, for example. Please do go away, do your own research and form your own opinions, but I will give you what I found when I jumped down the rabbit hole of this. The behaviours that animals began to display when they was in a restrictive living environment were things like behaviours like rhythmic behaviours, such as rocking. They would display and exhibit behaviours in alignment with anxiety and depression. They would also do things like bar biting. They would do pacing back and forward as well as rocking. They would also do things like self-mutilation, which is basically self-harm, but in animals. And these behaviours are only displayed in a restrictive living environment, not when animals just get to live in the way that they are organically meant to live. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking about how humans will impede on the way that animals live, and sometimes it may be for a purpose, like maybe they're trying to make sure that animals don't go extinct, but for the vast majority of the time it's for entertainment purposes, or it's not for any other valid reason. And most of us, when we hear this, would be horrified. But the other thing that it got me thinking is that although we might be quick to be horrified about those animals, I couldn't get away from the idea that we are born into many different systems that we have no choice of upon the moment we are born until the moment we die. And I just wonder whether we can truly, concretely say that we are not displaying similar symptoms of ill health, ill mental health, as a byproduct of not getting to choose how we live and having to suffer the consequences of being told what we can and can't do for our own mental well-being. I think it might even be possible, and again, hear me out, you do not have to agree with me on this, that humans may potentially have it worse, because I know very little of the human race who get to live off-grid, who get to always make independent decisions in their best interest of themselves and their family, because of all the conditions and all the systems, which is a multi-layered structure, and I will go into some of them in a minute, of how they're supposed to live and what will happen if they don't live like that. It's illegal. Some of these things that I was thinking is, upon being born, you have to name your child and identify them to the government. So that's one thing, you are instantly identifiable, which again, we don't ask many questions about, but it means that you don't get to just kind of, I guess, live super independently without any conditions being placed on what is expected of you at certain ages. For example, although, and I think this is a great thing, for example, education. And although home education is becoming more known, and it is actually something that we can actually legally do with our children, for the most part, we are told that upon 5 years old that they have to be in full-time education in a school. Again, so many people will be completely okay with those set of circumstances and they will thrive. And children who can do well will do well. But we know now more than ever, there is many children who cannot do well, who cannot thrive in that learning environment, and no matter how much differentiation happens, it is still very much a classroom learning situation where you have to sit, learn, read and write, be still and not ask questions. You have to just learn to regurgitate. Then at 16 you will go on to further education, which is now compulsory. You will then eventually go on to the working system. You also have to have this all figured out. You have to know what it is that you want to do. You then have to work for a house. You then have to work to provide for yourself and for your family if you have one, whilst in the mix of all the conditioning that is going on in those places, within your family, within your friends, within your schooling system, within your natural environment of where you live, and the social media that we are now exposed to. And then just fast forward all of the other additional stuff that is definitely there. Upon dying, you also have to pay for that. You have to pay for dying. You have to pay for your own funeral, or have insurance set out for this purpose because somebody said that that was a rule, or your family will have to pay for that. And then in the mix of all that are all the rules and regulations, all the systematic things. And then there'll be other systematic things like law, which for the most part works well. But we also know occasions where it doesn't, and where that one box doesn't fit everybody. But tell me, other than the power that you generate inside of yourself, if you know all this stuff to be able to do something with your belief system and how you view life and how you move forward, what free will are we born into? Do we not, as human beings, also suffer, live with the consequences of moving out of maybe how we are meant to organically live and placed in a restrictive environment of how they think that we should live? And again, I know that this is a wide open discussion topic, and there's many different answers, and there's many different times where, you know, you can take the meat and leave the bones, because some things apply and some things don't apply, and some things do apply over here and they don't apply over here. But for the most part, are human beings not also suffering zoochosis?